You'll recall around 2 years ago, the Bureau of Meteorology was under fire for tampering with weather records and removing data that showed extreme cold snaps, therefore manipulating temperature records so that average temperatures were skewed in favour of global warming. Well, it looks like there's dodgy activity going on within the Bureau again. Now, I stand to be corrected on this, but let's try and work out exactly what they're up to. They've rewritten Australia's temperature records, greatly increasing the rate of warming since 1910. In fact, their new data has generated a 23% increase in the rate of warming, an outstanding jump. Yet BOM can't offer an explanation as to why this is. Scientist Dr. Jennifer Marohasy has been following this issue for some time, particularly the last time this was done 2 years ago, so she knows this issue back to front. Jennifer, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on your program.
Why are they doing this?
Well, you talked about it happening a couple of years ago. That was when they had a limit on how cold temperatures could be recorded at Goulburn, and you were absolutely correct by putting a limit on how cold a temperature can be recorded, and at the same time putting in these new probes, these automatic weather stations that for the same temperature record warmer, for the same weather record warmer because of the nature of the instrument. You are going to generate global warming for the same weather, so you're going to end up, people are going to think it's warmer and they're going to be able to talk about record warm days, even though it actually in real terms hasn't got any warmer.
But the technology wasn't able to record when it was really, really cold, and so therefore the average skewed in favour of the warmer.
That's correct, and that I made that point very strongly to Josh Frydenberg when he was the minister. That they had a limit on how cold temperatures were able to be recorded at places like Goulburn. And he said there had to be a review. There was a review. The Bureau got a few of their mates to have a look at the situation and conclude that, yes, there may have actually, because they were denying that there was a limit on how cold temperatures could be recorded at Goulburn. After that review, they acknowledged that, yes, there had been a limit, but they said it wasn't a big deal. Let's move on.
Well, we didn't have a proper inquiry into it, and we should have had.
They didn't. And for 10 years now, we've been asking for a proper inquiry into the remodelling of the raw data, which is a slightly different issue. So temperatures, if we can just go back, temperatures have been recorded mostly from using thermometers. They record maximum temperatures, for example. The record for Australia goes back to 1841, which is a long time ago. And if you look at those early records, they were meticulously recorded at official weather stations, and they were never changed. They were never tampered with until 1996, with this increase in global warming and concern about global warming. And then the Bureau, the first time that they started doing this was in 1996. They started remodelling the temperature record. They started changing the temperatures as recorded to something that they thought, and they actually say they're improving the record, they're making it more accurate. But I'll give you a few examples as to why that's not the case. But so they started a little while ago with this remodelling that they call homogenisation. The most recent remodelling effort was announced in 2012 with what they called their Acorn SAT data set, which Greg Hunt said made everything perfect. It fixed up the past, and now we knew exactly what the past temperatures
It fixed
were.
up the past, yes. Okay. So the argument at the time was the fact that we hadn't increased our temperature by just 1 degree Celsius, it was 1.23 Celsius.
Well, if you look at the raw data for any particular site, you don't get the trends that they're talking about. So what they do is they remodel and they put together a select number of sites to generate a new figure, and they acknowledge that they do that. What they did, they announced in about 6 years ago, was that they'd done it all and they now had the perfect record. And we were cranky about that because we said, no, there's all these major issues with it, but you have to get into the detail. They then now, just as reported by Graham Lloyd in the Weekend Australian, have changed it all again. So they've remodelled the remodels. So, true.
They've homogenised. And what the hell does homogenised mean when it comes to temperature anyway? I thought it had everything to do with milk.
Well, if you take, can we take an example? Because I think it's
Do.
Okay,
Go.
so they say we have to remodel because sites change, because locations move. But if you take somewhere like Rutherglen, right, a rural location, the weather station, if you look at the catalogue, the Bureau catalogue, that weather station has never moved. It's been in a paddock at this research station in northwestern Victoria since 1913, okay?
Yep.
And it actually, the minimum temperature record shows a cooling trend. And that actually makes sense if you think about local land use change, because that used to be, grazing country and rabbit plagues and dust storms, going right back to the Federation drought and after. And then they introduced irrigation, and it's now viticulture.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different answer. So it's cool.
Cool.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
But the Bureau can't accept that. So they've changed the values at Rutherglen. They've literally, day by day, they've put this clever remodelling effort at work, and it drops the past temperatures at Rutherglen down by 1.7 degrees Celsius. 1.7 degrees Celsius, right? Just for Rutherglen. And so you change this like cooling because of land use change to one of dramatic warming.
Yeah.
They don't tell everybody that's what they've done for Rutherglen. What they do is they grab another 111 sites that they manage like that, put it all together and tell us what the new official record is.
Stop. Is it true the Bureau has opened new sites in hotter areas while closing cooler ones?
Yes, it has. It's opened a whole lot of new sites in northwestern New South Wales, and it's closed stations like Charlotte Pass that are at higher altitude. It does all of this in plain view, and nobody apart from perhaps yourself and me and a few of your listeners are up in arms. I mean, there should be a full inquiry into all of this.
And a bit of transparency, please, so that we could all understand why they're doing what they're doing instead of telling us half the story.
Well,
and a little transparency, and we wouldn't be so cynical about what they are up to.
But you would, Chris, because the reality is they can't explain. They're not expecting anybody to ask hard questions.
Yeah. So, I don't know where you go with this argument, and I don't know what you do with the government who's too scared to say boo at the moment. But within the Bureau of Meteorology, is there a culture of global warming alarmism?
Yes, and what people don't understand, though, on top of that, is there's actually only one person who remodels the temperature record, and he puts his name to these reports, and his name's Blair Trewin. He is the only person in the Acorn Stat Unit, so he does the remodelling, and then that is given to everybody else who just incorporates it without asking.
And what is he, a raving greenie or something?
I think Blair Trewin's a really clever guy who does what David Jones tells him to do, and he is under the supervision of David Jones directly or indirectly, and you can find out about David Jones if you look at the ClimateGate emails, because he's all through the. You aware of the ClimateGate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder whether some, the next government, if it's a Labor government, they won't go down this track, but some government, some minister has to have the testicles to say, enough is enough, let's look at why they're doing it and whether it makes any changes to our understanding of warming and cooling over the last century and a half. Because at the end of the day, science, the past is the past. The records that were taken in decades gone by should stand. They don't need to be changed.
Exactly.
It just doesn't. None of that makes sense to me. Anyway,
it doesn't make sense. I agree with you that there needs to be an inquiry, but we've been asking for this now for more than 10 years.
Yep.
I think what we need to actually do is establish a network of alternate Met stations, and I'm currently talking with a couple.
I'll record our own weather.
That's right. Just to put them on notice in the first instance that we can put a weather station up next to their weather station. We can include proper old-style mercury thermometers next to an electronic probe. We can do all sorts of things to actually get a better trying to turn off my
Yeah, they're a pain in the you-know-where, aren't they?
my mobile.
Listen, that's a really interesting concept. We should talk about that further down the track, and we'll get a chance to do that. But setting up an alternate set of figures, recorded properly, transparently, open to all on a live website so that we can actually tell when the Bureau starts to cook the books.
Exactly.
All right, I'll let you go, Jennifer. I've run out of time anyway, but thank you very much for yours.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, scientist Dr. Jennifer Marohasy.